Pre-dawn, March the 6th, 1836. In the darkness outside the walls of an old Spanish mission in Texas, more than 1,000 soldiers crouch in the cold, waiting for the signal to attack. Inside those crumbling walls, fewer than 200 men are sleeping their last hour of sleep. For 13 days, this tiny garrison has held. 13 days against an army that outnumbers them 9, 10, 11 to 1. They have been promised no mercy, they know no help is coming, and they have chosen to stay anyway. Among them are some of the most famous names on the American frontier. A former congressman turned living legend named Davy Crockett, a knife fighter whose blade already carried his name across the West, Jim Bowie, and a 26-year-old commander who had written, in his own hand, a vow to the entire world: victory or death. Within the hour, every fighting man inside these walls will be dead, and their deaths will light a fire that gives birth to a republic and changes the map of North America forever. This is the Siege of the Alamo. Welcome to Historical Club. In 1836, Texas was not yet American. It was the far northern frontier of Mexico, a vast, thinly settled land called Texas. For years, Mexico had opened this frontier to settlers from the United States, and American farmers, adventurers, and dreamers had crossed the border by the thousands, until they outnumbered the Mexican citizens of Texas many times over. But the relationship had soured. In Mexico City, a general named Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna had seized near-total power, tearing up the Constitution and crushing the rights of the states beneath him. Across the country, regions rose in revolt. And in Texas, the settlers and many of their Tejano neighbors took up arms in what became the Texas Revolution. In late 1835, the Texians drove the Mexican garrison out of the town of San Antonio de Béxar and seized the old mission that guarded it, a walled compound of stone and adobe, a former church and its courtyards known as the Alamo. Santa Anna would not let the insult stand. He raised an army and marched north through the winter to take it back, and to make an example that no rebel would ever forget. Holding the Alamo was a patchwork band of perhaps 200 men. In command stood William Barrett Travis, young, proud, just 26, an officer of the regular Texian army. Sharing authority with him was James Bowie, older, harder, a frontier legend already, a man whose very name was attached to the great knife on his belt. And riding in to join them, with a handful of sharpshooting volunteers from Tennessee, came the most famous of them all, Davy Crockett, former congressman, bear hunter, a legend of the American backwoods, who, after losing his seat in Congress, had reportedly told the voters who rejected him that they could go their own way. For he was going to Texas. These men, and the volunteers beside them, Texian and Tejano, American and immigrant, were about to face one of the largest armies on the continent. On February the 23rd, Santa Anna's columns marched into San Antonio. The defenders pulled back behind the Alamo's walls. And over the town, the Mexican army raised a blood-red flag, a signal understood by every man who saw it. No quarter, no surrender, no prisoners, no mercy. Travis answered with a cannon shot. And the next day, surrounded, outnumbered, with the enemy's guns already pounding his walls, he sat down and wrote a letter. Not to a general, to the world, to the people of Texas and all Americans in the world. He described his desperate position. He swore he would never surrender and never retreat. And he closed with 3 words that would outlive him: victory or death. Riders carried that letter out through the enemy lines in the dark, pleading for reinforcements. A few dozen brave men slipped in to join the doomed garrison. But the great relief army that Travis prayed for would never arrive. And so the siege settled into 13 days of thunder and waiting. By day, Mexican artillery battered the walls, dragging their batteries closer and closer. By night, the exhausted defenders held their posts, stealing sleep where they could, watching the dark horizon for help that was not coming. Jim Bowie, the great fighter, fell gravely ill and took to a cot, too weak to stand. But he refused to leave. There is a story told of those final days. That Travis gathered his men, drew his sword, and traced a single line across the dirt, asking every man willing to stay and die for Texas to step across it. And the story says that all of them did, save one. Whether it happened exactly so, no one can prove, but it captures a truth that is beyond doubt, that the men of the Alamo knew what was coming and chose to remain. In the cold dark before dawn, on March the 6th, the waiting ended. Santa Anna hurled his columns at the walls from every direction at once. In that first rush, the defenders' cannon and rifles tore terrible gaps in the attackers, and the assault reeled backward. But there were simply too many. The Mexican soldiers reformed, surged forward again, and found the weak point, the north wall, and poured over it like a flood. And then a bugle call rang out across the battlefield, the degüello, the old merciless tune that meant the cutting of the throat. That meant no quarter would be given. The fighting spilled into the courtyards, hand to hand, in the half-light. Travis is said to have fallen early at the north wall, among the very first to die. Bowie was killed upon his sickbed, fighting to the end with whatever he could grip. And Crockett, however he met his end, whether cut down among his Tennesseans or taken and executed in the final moments, met it there, inside those walls, with the others. By sunrise, it was finished. Every defender who had carried a weapon was dead. Perhaps 200 men, gone in little more than an hour. Santa Anna had his victory. He had wiped the garrison from the earth. He believed he had broken the rebellion. He had done the very opposite. A handful of survivors were spared, the women, children, and servants who had sheltered inside the walls. Among them was a young woman named Susanna Dickinson, who had lost her husband in the fighting. Santa Anna sent her out with her infant daughter to carry the news across Texas, a warning of what awaited anyone who dared defy him. But the warning became a battle cry. As word of the Alamo spread, it did not break the Texian spirit. It set it ablaze. Volunteers flooded to the cause, and 6 weeks later, on the 21st of April, an army under Sam Houston fell upon Santa Anna's forces at San Jacinto. The Texians charged, screaming 3 words across the field. Remember the Alamo. In 18 minutes, it was over. Santa Anna's army was shattered, and the general himself was taken prisoner. Out of those 18 minutes, and the 13 days that had inspired them, was born the independent Republic of Texas. A republic that, within a decade, would join the United States, pulling the map of a continent westward, and setting in motion the events that would one day carry America all the way to the Pacific. 200 men had held an indefensible mission for 13 days and died to the last. And in dying, they had given their cause something no army ever could. A reason for men to charge straight into the guns, shouting their name. If this story stirred something in you, if you believe these last stands deserve to be remembered, and remembered well, then take a moment and help us keep telling them. Tap that like button, subscribe to Historical Club, and ring the bell so the next story finds its way to you. Tell us in the comments, whose last stand should we tell next? And we will see you on the next one.